NEP, New Education Policy. These are the words on everyone's, at least parents and 12th graders' tongues today, and the people that just graduated, because they're complaining about why don't we have this. And on another side of things, there's some Coco out. Come here. NEP, New Education Policy. These are the words that are on the tip of their tongues. Now, why? Either it's to complain that this thing is too good and I wish I had it too, or it's to complain that this shit sucks and it will not work. Well, me, Parth, Bhalla, hated education. I hated my school, I hated my college, and the irony was that right after the whole thing, my first job was in education. I in fact was heading the marketing team for the best digital institute in India, IIDE. So it does give me a little bit of insight into the education world, and just besides that, I'm very interested. Now here's how we're going to look at this video. First, we're going to understand what is the purpose of education. What do we want from being educated? Second is, we're going to be looking at the current or the old education system, whatever you want to call it, and then look at what the best education system in the world has to offer. So we have a map of things. Third, what we're going to do is look at the new education policy and see where it falls in this radar. And is it worth the hype? Post that, I'll give you my conclusion. Alright, so let's get started. So what I think is, instead of diving straight into the old education system or looking at what the new education system is like or seeing the best, why don't we start with something basic? Something like, what is the purpose of education? This in no way is some certified standard of what a perfect education or what the purpose of education is like, but just like three main topics that I feel are super impactful to have a purposeful education. Being employable, learning things like vocational skills through vocational courses, learning things about entrepreneurship, learning a different variety of things that might hold your interest, and not learning them through rote learning or reading a book or memorizing something, but instead learning through practical applications, through projects and through internships. I believe that's one of the first and one of the most important things an education can provide you. Having life skills. Now this is something most schools don't even focus on. Things like creative thinking, things like communication skills, interpersonal skills, being a good leader, basic problem solving skills, things like being able to be emotionally intelligent, having empathy. All these things aren't even taught in school today. So I feel life skills are so important. My personal favorite, personal development skills. Being able to get to know yourself, what your values are, what your principles are in life, what do you want to do, what do you feel purposeful about, how do you build good habits, how do you deal with failure, how do you be consistent in life, how do you become resilient, how do you deal with the adversities life is going to throw at you, how do you become a strong human being inside. Most of the school systems today are missing this, and I think it's absolutely vital to learn as a school going student. So these are three main points I believe are absolutely important to have in an education system. Now let's go to point number B or 2, because I already said 1, 2, 3, but the next thing. So the old system, the system that we all crib about, the system that we've all been like, this doesn't work, the system that was actually designed for the industrial age. The first and foremost problem is that it's based on rote learning. And what I mean by that is the end goal over here is to give the exam. You learn something and you just learn it as much as you need to be able to write that answer, get those marks, and then you can forget about it. There's no focus on practical understanding and usage of whatever you learn. ignoring individual strengths and natural talents. For the old system, everyone was the same. There were no different types of humans, and everyone had to follow this boundary. And if you stepped out, negative marking. Like, how does that make any sense? I'm kind of offended while I'm saying this. Now, point number 3 is an addition of point number 1 and 2, which is because of rote learning, we have a specific, standardized, rigid formula for evaluation, and we never consider the individuality of a human. So if there's something outside of that standardized formula, it just doesn't matter. So there's no space for individuality in this system. And just like Albert Einstein very rightly said, everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. Come on, everyone's different. You got to accept that. Now, point number 4 is about how school children have to start going to school at the age of 2. Literally 2. They are so young, they haven't even built like half of their subconscious mind. They're learning from their parents, they're being in nature, just familiarizing themselves with this world, learning words and stuff, and they're already put into this rat race. Point number 5, something known as 10 plus 2 plus 3. 10 plus 2 plus 3. What that basically means is that till 10th grade, everyone studies pretty much the same thing. In 10th grade, you have to make a decision. What do you want to study? Is science, commerce, or humanities? Now, the issue with that is, personally, and so many other people have had varied interests. Some in science, some in commerce, and some in humanities. Like a mixture of all of them. That was absolutely rigid. If you follow one stream, you have to go in that stream. If you want to do science later on, you have to choose science now. If you just no variety. College is based entirely upon that. Now, people are dynamic in nature. They have different interests. And a pertaining problem for our country has been the dropout rates. From 5th to 6th grade, about 91% of the people actually get enrolled. From 8th to 9th grade, only 79-80% of the people get enrolled. And from 10th to 11th grade, only 56% of the people get enrolled, which are averages, but it's ridiculous. That means just a little more than half of the people that actually apply to school graduate from school in our country. Wow. There are 2 major problems that come with this. First is that the people who can afford good education are the only ones that get it. Doesn't mean the people who deserve it get it. The people who can't afford it most likely don't. And the second problem is, because it's about profit, the priority changes. You don't focus on teacher training, you focus on the bottom line. And we all know how that goes. And the last point is actually a question. How many students did you have in your class? I had like 50, 55. I'm not going to name schools, but there's classes with like 70, 80 students that I know in one class with one teacher. That's ridiculous. Do I even need to make this point about student-teacher ratio? You know what I'm talking about. Now, after hearing the points that I just shared above, do you think this solves the purpose of education? Do you think we're learning actual skills in a practical way that we can understand and apply in our lives? Okay, for this part, let's do something really interesting. Let's take the best education policy in the world, which is of Finland, and compare it to the new education policy of India. Spoiler alert, a lot of it is copied, by the way. So let's start this by understanding the optimal teacher is to student ratio. In Finland, that is 16:1. Imagine 16 students and 1 teacher. In India, we're aiming for 30:1. And in some rural areas where it gets really tough, we're aiming to have 25:1. That's a good start, I'd say. There's a holistic learning approach. In Finland, the ideology is that a student is exposed to many different, various types of subjects. So in an early age, they can get an idea of what they're interested in and what they're not. And that's the exact approach that we're trying to add over here. We're adding subjects like artificial intelligence, design thinking, and organic living just to expose the students to many more options so they get an idea of what they're interested in. This also increases employment opportunities, which is a great plus for us. Remember that point I got pissed off about, called standardization. Well, now that standardization is turning into individualization. What that means is that there's not going to be one approach for all people. There's going to be an individual approach depending on the person's strengths and weaknesses. If someone's interested in something, they're going to be encouraged to do that even more. This is something that Finland has been promoting for a really long time, and now India is going to be doing that too. Amazing. So in Finland, there's only one exam, which is in the end of the high school, 9th grade. And after that, they can choose to continue school or not. They have an option, which is different, and we won't get into that. In India, you're going to have an exam in 3rd grade, in 5th grade, in 8th grade, and then you have your board exams in 10th and 12th, which is supposed to have much lesser stakes than compared to before. So better, not the best, but better. Well, point number 4 is about psychological counseling. Finland is way ahead in this field. There is psychological counseling for students, whatever kind of support and stuff they need. And if they're having any mental health issues, they're always there for them. India is still lacking in that space. There's still some work that needs to be done. And I'm going to conclude about this later with a couple of opinions that I have. The last 2 points are really cool things that the Finnish system does that the Indian probably can't afford to do. First is that education is free for all students, even foreign students, and their healthcare, the Medicare, is taken care of by the government. In India, we cannot obviously afford to do that, or even if we can, we're just not doing that yet. But we do not have equal opportunities for all in a way. It's not standardized for all students, and education is obviously not free. And second, there's no Medicare for students. So these are the main differences between the Finnish system of education and the new education policy in India. Now, before I end the video, I'm just going to add a couple of more points as to how the Indian education policy is benefiting students today. And after that, I'll just share my conclusion with you. So the things I like about this whole thing is, first, the employment opportunities are going to increase massively because the vocational skills that people are learning are also increasing, while the contemporary skills like coding and AI, like stuff that I mentioned before, are also increasing. So overall, people are going to have more skills, and because of that, employment is going to increase. Now, the second thing that I really like about the system is that it's working towards decreasing drop-offs. What they've done is they made a system where you get a certificate and credits for every 5 years, 3 years, 3 years, and 2 years that you do in the education system. And also beyond that, you're getting different options of things that you're interested in. So the likeliness of people in mostly the rural areas to drop off, it's much lesser than before, because you're giving them options and you're giving them credits with the ability to rejoin later. Now, this is by far one of my most favorite things they're doing. It's probably a little controversial. Some people might be against it, but I love it. What they're doing is they're making the native language compulsory till 5th grade. English is no longer going to be a compulsory language. And this is in an attempt to remove language barriers from actually interfering with the education. Now, every state can choose 2 India-based languages that the student has to learn and 1 foreign language that the student can choose for him or herself. Besides this, there's going to be a standardization in all the sign language between all the states. Sometimes it's different in different states, so there's going to be a standardization for that throughout the country. And this is done in an attempt to just make people more culturally oriented in India. If you see China and Germany and a lot of other countries, they focus on learning in their regional language, and India's been promoting English far too much. So I'm glad this is happening. I think it's a great initiative. Now in India, people tend to take a lot of stress. More than that, parents tend to give stress to students that your boards are coming, your boards are coming, your boards are coming. Like, what the hell? Now, just to reduce this overall stress and burden of the student's life, and maybe even the parents' life, they're reducing the kind of curriculum there is. They're reducing this, the intensity with which the grading and everything is going to be done. And they're trying to basically make sure that like outside coaching classes are not necessary for such examinations. I think that's great. I think I've said that's great for so many other points also. And teachers, they're the people that actually provide the value on ground to students. Finally, they are being forced to focus on their growth. A couple of things that are being done to encourage teachers to grow is, first, they're going to be allowed to teach at multiple schools. So the resources can be shared as well as like school resources. Second is that teachers get more autonomy in the way that they teach. So if they think another methodology or another way of teaching or something else is just better and is more effective, they have the right to do that. Third is there's going to be a professional development training for teachers that focuses on making sure that A, whatever the development is happening is standardized, and B, 50 hours of their time has to go into learning something that they're actually interested in. So they grow as teachers. How cool is that? And this is also done in an attempt to shutting down other institutes that are training teachers and have unstandardized ways. So on that note, this is everything I had to share, and I'm going to conclude by saying education is everything. 13 of the most important years of human life are spent in the school system, and that is where everything happens. The environment that we're in, the things that we learn, the people that we meet, the ideas that we're taught molds us to become the people that we are today. And that needs to be able to empower us, to be able to help us find ourselves as human, the values that we have, the impact that we want to create in society, and empower us with the right skills to be able to fulfill our fullest potential, basically. So I'm glad that this change is coming in place, but I still believe that there are some issues with it. And I think there are like 4 main points that I have that I'm going to close this on. So point number 1, implementation. Now, just like demonetization, this too is a very good initiative, but it lacks a sense of planning and execution strategy. Out of the whole 66-page document, there are only 3 pages on how it's going to be implemented. So I believe that is one of the key areas where the focus should be. Point number 2, teacher and administration empowerment, because they're the people that are going to be implementing it in the real world. Their training, their empowerment, and focusing on getting them on the side of this policy is absolutely crucial over here. Third point is about being open-minded and being quick to implement change. Now, over here, the system as a whole works with the teachers, the administration, the people who are actually implementing this, and getting feedback from the students on what's working and what's not working. And they're quick to implement the changes that are required. I don't want to see the next policy coming in 5, 10, 15 years from now. And point number 4, and it's just a little personal to me, is focus on personal development. I still believe that we're lacking focus on things like habit development, emotional intelligence, leadership, communication, skills like these that empower a person for a lifetime, having the right mindset, being able to deal with failure. All these kind of things make sure that you build a strong person, and I believe this is still lacking. And if you're open-minded to change and we get this feedback and we're able to implement this quickly, I believe we're heading in the right direction. So that's my whole take. I believe if we take these small steps, we're heading in the right direction, and it might just be the thing that our country needs at this point in time. So on that note, I'm going to leave you guys. I didn't see any such video on the internet, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tried to put like a whole spectrum of information and perspective. So hope you guys found it useful, and if you did, share it with a friend. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye-bye.